Hello and welcome to Love from the Other Side. If you are on this video, perhaps you too are in need of hope. And it is our intention to bring you just that with these stories from around the world of people who have shared their near-death experiences. While you may not agree with everything that they share, please keep in mind that it is their experience and all comments need to be kept respectful and kind. Our first experience happened to a young man who was just 14 years old at the time of his near-death experience. When I was 14 years old, I became suddenly acutely sick with a rare autoimmune disease. I had gone into lung and kidney failure and was placed in a medically induced coma. I later found out that I had been given the last rites and that the doctors were preparing to turn my life support machines off. I, of course, was aware of none of this. Prior to being placed in a coma, I knew I was dying. No one told me this, as I was just a child, but I knew that's where I was heading. I wasn't scared, but I was upset that those around me were crying and upset. I woke up in heaven. I was walking through a tunnel with many other people, all kinds of people. People with their dogs on leads, businessmen with briefcases, mums with pushchairs, children, the elderly from all walks of life. I found myself in a beautiful garden, following a little path. The hedges were green and perfectly manicured, as was the grass. The sky was blue and it was perfectly warm, not too hot or too cold. To my left, there was an open field with children and adults climbing over a country fence. I couldn't see over the fence, but I knew that I was not to go that far. I was sent back to the tunnel and walked back whilst other people, most of them, were going the opposite way, which was to heaven. I eventually woke from my coma. I felt an angel hold my hand and I felt surrounded by those in spirit. A few days later, I was transferred to a different ward as I could now breathe on my own. At exactly 1 a.m., I noted the clock on the wall. I felt a huge surge of energy flow through me. I felt my body being lifted as though there was a whirlwind sweeping through me. I felt too much energy. I could see and feel my soul crashing through the roof of the hospital. It was the most incredible experience. I felt as though everything was going to be okay, that I was to live, and I was told that I had something special to do in life first. I am now 37 years old, married with 3 daughters. I am grateful for my life and constantly thankful for my blessings. Our next experience happened in 1986 when this woman was 19 years old. She had joined her co-workers on a kayaking trip on the Rouge River. Here's what she had to say. The current that year was historically higher and swifter than normal because spring had arrived, melting the snow in the mountains. I uneventfully traveled through the Class 2 and 3 rapids in an inflatable one-person kayak during the morning. The paddling seemed easy and the flow of the water and conversation around me was rather relaxed. The vast majority of the rapids were pretty forgiving. We stopped midday for lunch on the shore and to take a rest before continuing our trip to a much more challenging section of the river. After a few minor rapids in Mule Canyon, our guide led our group to one of the most dangerous parts of the river, known as Blossom Bar. This Class 4 section of the river was clogged with huge boulders and a swirling hole-like vortex. The standard route through the churning water was to pass the boulders, and it required me to make a crucial left-to-right paddling move to avoid being swept up into a line of rocks known as picket fence. My failure to do that quickly caused me to slam into the boulders and to roll out of the kayak into the freezing water. I wore a life vest, but the current dragged me right into a boiling hole of turbulent water. The shock of the cold water caused me to gasp, and in doing so, I inhaled river water deep into my lungs. I became disoriented. losing my orientation in the water. I could see the sky above, but I couldn't reach the surface to get air. The current dragged me down. The more I fought against it, and my lungs burned as panic set in. I suddenly believed that I was going to die there, and the last thing I remember saying was, "God, please help me." Without oxygen, I grew weaker and eventually stopped struggling entirely. I went limp in the cold darkness of the water, and suddenly I could no longer feel the burning and the ache of the water in my lungs. The darkness around me grew completely white, and I felt like I was rushing at light speed through a tunnel. I felt warm as the pain left me, at peace with myself and the environment around me. Unconditional, pure love radiated all around me and into me. Love covered me like a warm blanket from an unknown source. As I left the tunnel, I was aware of parts of my body that weren't visible, like my hands, arms, and chest. Looking down, I couldn't see any feet. I did see a silver cord attached to my body, which had a luminescence to it. Looking around me, I could see a room that appeared to be formed from pure white clouds, yet wasn't solid. In the room were 3 beings made of shimmering crystal. Light shone through them like a glass prism forming a rainbow. One was larger than the other 2, but all of them spoke to me. I was afraid of them, and they seemed to realize this. Instantly, they transformed into what I recognized as angels. They didn't have bird wings. They had fibers like fiber optic cables that were shaped like wings, and pure light shone through the fibers, forming colors in all shades. When they spoke, their messages were sent telepathically. They could read my thoughts. Looking into their eyes, there were shades of intense colors that changed and shifted with electric sparks, as if I were watching a DVD still spinning in a DVD player. And the love that radiated from their eyes, as if I were the most precious creation God had ever placed into existence. It was as if they knew me intimately, yet I didn't feel uncomfortable feeling that they did. The larger angel said, "You have arrived too soon. The time has not yet come for you to be here. You must go back and finish your work on earth. But since you are here, we will show you things." The larger angel held a large book, but its pages were like images instead of words. I saw scenes from my life in the moments from my conception to the moment I fell out of the kayak into the river. The pages flipped rapidly like watching a movie. I was instantly reminded of all the things I did for others or failed to do for someone. They showed me a man I didn't know whose face I could not see clearly, and many children that were still yet to be. One of the smaller angels said, "I am Yeshel. I have been with you since the dawn of time, and I will be with you for eternity. You must go back. You have to be there for them. I will show you what you can look forward to until then. Then you have to go back to your body." Instantly, Yeshel and I were transported to the center of a vast golden field. I could hear the most beautiful music, and I could feel it moving through me. The breeze blew against the tall golden wheat stalks as it did, and I could feel the spirit of all the living things around me. Animals, plants, the elements. I was one with them. I looked up and saw a huge ball of light that cast the purest warm light all around me, and I felt God touch my skin. He knew me. He loved me no matter how imperfect my earthly life had been. I was perfect and whole. I felt no pain. The angel took me up higher, and I felt like I was soaring endlessly. I could see a huge waterfall with no beginning and no end. Love and peace reigned here. I sensed the presence of loved ones that had passed on, but I didn't see them. We moved on over the golden field, and at the end of it was a country fence. Beyond that was an enormous tree with a canopy of gold leaves. When the breeze touched the leaves, they would all fly off the tree's branches in the shape of colorful birds of all varieties. There was a lake beside it, and it flowed on both sides of the boundary. I looked into the water, and it had a gloss like liquid mercury does. Yeshel said again, "I have been with you since the dawn of time, and I will be with you for eternity. You cannot cross the barrier. It's time for you to go back to your existence on earth. You have work to finish first. Words could not express the sorrow I felt having to leave that place. I cried and begged for him to let me stay. He said, "When it is time, I will come back for you. But now," and with that, he wrestled my spirit back into my earthly body with so much force that I was popped clear of the rocky hole that I was trapped under in the water. All the water I inhaled came flying out of my lungs as I gasped and took a panicked breath of air. I became aware of the pain almost immediately in my chest and the hand of a rescuer grabbing me by the back of my life vest. I nearly knocked him out of his kayak, and then someone else on a bigger water boat pulled me up into the boat and back into this earthly dimension. It took me a long time to understand why am I here, and I still question why me. I even did research about the Rouge River after my near drowning. Over 21 people have died at Blossom Bar since my NDE. They died, I survived. Because of my NDE, I am closer to God, and I realize now that life is not a series of coincidences, but of parallels and choices. My choices directly affect those around me, and we are all interconnected. My purpose has not yet been fulfilled. It would take me years to realize that I was meant to heal others. My sensitive abilities grew stronger after my NDE. I am empathic, clairvoyant, and clairaudient now. I can hear the voices of those beyond the veil, but still have not trained myself to see spirit clearly with my human eyes. My NDE has and will continue to be the most metaphysically profound experience I have ever had. I was brought to tears writing this memory of my experience because my words pale in comparison to all the things I saw, felt, and heard during my journey into a heavenly realm. I am not religious, but I remain closer to spirit than ever because of my NDE. I know that there are dimensions beyond this one and that I am here for a reason. Well, that is our second and last experience of the day. I hope that you enjoyed these, and if you're like me, maybe you picked up on the fact that both experiences noted a country fence. That's something that I did not notice until I was narrating the second NDE. I love it when we hear these small similarities from one experience to the next. Really subtle things like a country fence that stand out. I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and until next time, God bless.